Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 108. So, every once in a while on the show, we get to a topic that really throws me off, and these topics come to me intuitively, and so I can usually tell when a topic comes to me. We're going to talk about claiming your courage. That's our topic tonight. And then I'm like, oh, what am I going to say? And sometimes it's like crickets. I got nothing. Sometimes it's like there's so many different things I could talk about that I can't narrow it down. And what I have found after doing this show for about 2 years is that underneath that, there is something going on. We talk about spiritual excavation a lot. And so it's important to excavate. When things are feeling a little bit off and you're not sure why, it's important to excavate. And that takes courage. We're going to talk about that tonight. So I'm going to go into kind of a really personal example here, which sometimes I stall a little bit on those. But I just want to say before we get into that, we're talking about trauma healing. This is in our series of trauma healing that we've been doing the last few shows on. And trauma healing takes courage. Every single part of trauma healing takes courage. I was thinking about this in terms of my spiritual excavation process, which you can read about on my website. That's paulataylorenergy.com. There's 4 steps. So the first step is awareness. Okay, I have trauma. You have to acknowledge you have trauma. That takes a huge amount of courage. You have to recognize what the trauma was or maybe explore the trauma. That takes a huge amount of courage. And then kind of being aware of how the trauma is affecting you in your current life, that you're triggered by this trauma. All of that takes a huge amount of courage. And then the second step in spiritual processing is the mental processing. Trying to understand, what happened to me. Sometimes it's uncovering memories or getting into the feelings of it. That's step 3 is emotional processing. But some of this, I call it steps, but sometimes we go back and forth. So that takes a huge amount of courage to go into your trauma mentally, to think about it, to relive it sometimes in order to try to release. So then the next step is the emotional and physical processing. And this is the most important part of spiritual processing. This is the step that most people miss. Trauma is held in the physical body and it must be released. The emotions of trauma are held in the physical body energetically, and they must be released. So it's not enough to understand your trauma and work through that, which takes a huge amount of courage. Then you got to find it in your body, which is like the ultimate discomfort, and figure out what you need to do to release it. And of course, at any point in this process, it is imperative sometimes to ask for help. And that takes a huge amount of courage as well. So then the last step in spiritual processing is that letting go. And that takes a huge amount of courage because sometimes we've actually built up whole aspects of our personalities around that trauma without realizing it. So sometimes there's these questions like, well, who am I if not for the trauma? So every step in this process, wherever you are, and every single person on earth has trauma. I am fully convinced of this. I think if we all acknowledge this, the world would start to be a better place. We'd be nicer to each other. We'd be more understanding because the person that traumatized us also was traumatized. And we might start to have more compassion. That's one of the things that I work on with people that I work with, for myself. So I am stalling. So I'm going to get into my personal example and recognize here that the details of this may not apply to you, but what's underneath them does. That's why I like to give these examples. It's one of the reasons I did not go fully into psychology, because I didn't like the aspect of being in therapy where you're sort of a blank canvas and the person just kind of talks to you and you reflect back. I think we are social creatures, and I think that when we can recognize ourselves in someone else's story, that moves a huge amount of energy. And for me, that's what this is about. So if you followed my work at all, if you've read my book, if you've watched the show or listened to the podcast, I pretty frequently talk about how the body is not my favorite thing. The physical realm is not my comfort zone. The spiritual, I'm all over it. Like, let's go journey. Let's do whatever we do in the spiritual realm and the energetic realm. The emotions are really tied to energetic. So I'm pretty comfortable with a lot of that stuff. But I've never been super comfortable with my physical body. That's something I've been working on for like the last few years. But I've had a lot of health problems in my life. And so I'm just going to focus on a few because we could go on for hours. We don't want to do that. Again, this is kind of an example for you to understand how hard this process is and how much courage it really does take to recognize trauma. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this kind of work since I was about 19. That's like 25 years now. And it's still hard for me. It's still hard to call in my courage. That's what we're going to do in our meditation tonight. So when I was about 19, I started having problems with my urinary bladder. A lot of my physical problems, most of them are kind of in that sacral chakra region. And so I went to my doctor and they ordered some tests, and essentially everything they kept saying there's nothing wrong with you. Everything kept coming back normal. And to the point where at one point the doctor found out I was in therapy and basically told me, well, this is all in your head. You need to work on your emotional issues. And it's like, I can't make it through a 50-minute class without having to pee. Like that's definitely not just in my head, right? So that was very traumatizing. Then I finally figured out what it was, interstitial cystitis, which is strongly linked to endometriosis, which I also have, I found out later. And I went back to the doctor and she said, that's not a real thing, that's made up. Because it was new, it was newly discovered. It was a chronic thing that they were just kind of starting to learn about. And I realized over the last week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, like today I had the big explosion of like, the awareness that made me want to crawl into a hole and die, which is how this trauma works a lot of times. That was very traumatizing for me, extremely traumatizing to have someone look me in the eye and basically say, I don't believe you and I can't help you. And that experience has been repeated multiple times in my life. When I started having fertility issues, I went to one doctor first, couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, went to another doctor. They never did figure out what the problem was, why I couldn't maintain a pregnancy past about 5 or 6 weeks. I've had now, I think, 12 miscarriages. It sounds terrible to say, I kind of lost count, but it just happens so often at a certain point that you do lose track. And again, the same thing. I can't help you. We don't know what's wrong with you. There's nothing overtly wrong with you. We can't figure out why this is happening. This is like a repeating pattern in my life. So over the last 5 or 6 months, I was kind of in a place where my endometriosis was like tolerable, I will say, tolerable. And it has steadily gotten worse and less tolerable, to the point where that was one of the steps into this awareness, was like, I have to do something about this. So that is partly why I will be taking a little bit of time off. I'm having a medical procedure next week to try to figure out the next step. And the next step may be surgery, and the surgery may involve my bowel. All of that is just like scary as AF. Like, to think that somebody might have to go in and cut out part of my bowel because there's endometriosis on there. Like, again, this is a big part of why I pushed this away for so long. I was absolutely in denial about this. I thought I can just make it through to menopause. It's another, I don't know how many, or 6 years, 8 years, something like that. Like I can white knuckle it, as Dr. Phil likes to say. That's my only Dr. Phil thing I ever like to quote. So along with this, I started excavating this old trauma, and I realized part of the reason that I haven't gone and asked for help is because no one ever helps me. I've never been able, I go and ask for help and it's like, we don't know how to help you. We don't know what to do for you. And there's a lot of baggage there. And underneath that, even further, I discovered that there's this feeling of self-reliance, of always having had to kind of rely on myself and feeling like I wasn't supported. And a lot of that started, probably even in early childhood. But when I think about what I'm talking about tonight, I can trace a lot of it back to that experience when I was 19, where that doctor basically told me, Yeah, we can't. It's all in your head. We can't help you. So, every step along this path has required a huge amount of courage for me and for you. Like, whatever, I'm talking about this physical kind of discovery, but like recognizing, wow, I'm in denial. Things are way worse than I thought they were. That's a lot of times how trauma healing starts. I cannot live this way anymore. I cannot pretend that things are okay. They're not. That, just admitting that, even to yourself, requires a huge amount of courage. Admitting that to another person is even more courageous. It requires more courage. Reaching out for help. I finally contacted a true specialist in endometriosis. I finally contacted a true specialist in pelvic floor physical therapy. And my experience with both of them gave me hope for the first time in a really long time. And then there's thoughts that come up like, if I had done this sooner, would I have had to suffer these last several years? And some of that is that maybe I just wasn't ready. Trauma healing kind of has to happen when you're ready for it. But all of this stuff required a huge amount of courage. Talking about this right now is making me really hot and uncomfortable. And I do that purposely because I want you to see that it's possible. I want you to know that this work, yes, it's hard and it's heavy and it's scary, but you can do it. We can do it together by calling in our courage, which is what we're going to do in tonight's meditation. So recognizing that you have trauma in your past, that requires courage. Admitting it to yourself, that requires courage. Trying to mentally process through it requires a huge amount of courage and oftentimes mental health professional help. But then again, that step that is so often missed, even in the mental health field, is the processing in the physical body. Finding, where is this trauma held? I already had issues in my sacral chakra region, and then a doctor told me they were all in my head. I betcha that trauma's held in the same area. It just added to whatever the trauma was that was already there. So processing that, figuring out how to work through that, how to feel those emotions, how to let them out, and then release them from the physical body. Sometimes that requires the most courage of all, because again, it's not a step that a lot of people even know is important. But if you're really going to release trauma, if you're going to truly heal it to the point where it doesn't trigger you anymore, that is a necessary step. So in tonight's meditation, we're going to go to a really safe space, as we always do. We're going to do some work with sound bowls. I've got a crystal bowl tonight, and then I've got a smaller Tibetan bowl. We're going to do some vocalization. I think we're going to call in a lot of dragon energy. Dragons are courageous, and they hold the energy of unconditional love, of fiery, protective, unconditional love. A lot of times on the show, I talk about beautiful, like flowing light, and I love that. That is my favorite. But sometimes we need that fiery, protective love. We need that courageous love. So if you've not heard dragon language before, go gachayata sheote shate. It's a little bit intense, but it's always for your highest good. I'm going to do a little bit with binaural frequencies because that will kind of vibrate some of this fear out of our system so we can call in courage. I think it's going to be a really powerful healing session, a really powerful meditation. And so I think we're ready to jump right into it. So let's meditate together. So start by finding a comfortable position. For this meditation, I do suggest that you sit up in a way that feels comfortable, that you feel supported. You can lean your back against something. If you're sitting on the ground, you might raise your hips up with a bolster or a pillow. Just be in a position that you can maintain for the next 10 minutes or so. And then take 3 nice deep oxytocin breaths. You're going to breathe in through your nose, let your belly float out strongly. Imagine pulling that breath all the way down to the bottom of your pelvis. And then as you breathe out, you're going to sigh that out with an audible ha sound. Ha. that 2 more times, that audible ha sound vibrates the vagus nerve. It tells the body that we're coming out of that fight, flight, or freeze into that ease response. Maybe shrug your shoulders a few times. Just get comfortable. Breathe into any areas of tension in the body. And then as you come still, we're going to our energetic sanctuary. We're bringing it into this space. If you've not been there before, just imagine that you're sitting in the safest space you can possibly imagine. This is a beautiful space, an entire planet that is all yours. And you control this space. Nothing can come in here that you do not invite in. Nothing unsafe can happen to you here. It's completely safe. It's completely protected. We're going to explore a new area of our energetic sanctuary in this meditation that we have not visited previously. So I want you to look and notice in the distance that you see a mountain range. And just kind of notice what that mountain range looks like. Notice what the colors look like. Maybe you can even smell the wind coming from that mountain range. And then because this is an energetic space, we don't have to do much to travel there. We can just imagine that we're at the foot of the mountains and there we are. So look up at these beautiful mountains. Notice the colors. Notice if you hear any sounds of nature. Notice that whatever you're experiencing here, it's extremely peaceful. It's extremely safe. And then again, we're going to hike up the mountain. And this is something that can happen almost instantaneously. There's no effort here. We're in the energetic space. But as you're hiking up your mountain, we're going to go all the way to the top. Just notice what your surroundings look like. Notice, is this a wooded mountain? Is it more open? What color is the soil? Are there rocks? Do you see animals? Maybe you're seeing animals that don't exist on this earthly plane. Just enjoy the journey. We're not going to take too long to get there, but enjoy this journey as we travel up to the top of this mountain. And as you come to the top of the mountain, notice that you can look out and see for a very long time, almost the entirety of your planet you can see. And notice again how peaceful this is, how safe this is. And we're going to build a fire here. We're going to build a campfire. So just imagine that you've gathered some logs, some sticks, some kindling, however this is calling to you intuitively. And this is a symbolic fire that we're actually going to light within our bodies, within a few of our chakras within our bodies. So you're looking at this fire in this energetic space, but you're also lighting this fire in your heart space. You might put a hand on your heart if you like. You're lighting this fire in the cave of your belly, that solar plexus and sacral chakra area. You might put a hand on your belly. And as you light this fire, notice how beautiful it is. Notice, perhaps it starts out small. Maybe you need to add some more kindling or more wood. Maybe you need to blow on the fire to get it to become larger. But eventually this is a giant bonfire, completely safe. This is an energetic fire, so it can't hurt anything. It can't burn anything down. It can burn away fear. And that's what we're doing here before we call in our courage, before we claim our courage. So allow this fire to grow. Feel it growing inside you now. Perhaps the base of this fire starts at the base of your pelvis. You've got your wood here, and it's burning up through that cave of your belly. It's burning up into the heart space, even into the throat. And we're allowing this fire now to burn up any fear around our trauma specifically. Any fear we need to overcome to step into whatever comes next in terms of letting go of that trauma, of letting go of the frequency of trauma in the body, of working through it in the mental space. And feel this flame, feel this fire start to grow beyond your physical body. Now, in your energetic space, in your sanctuary, you might step into this fire because it cannot hurt you. And so this fire consumes your entire body. There's no pain, it's completely safe, and it starts to burn away any frequencies of fear that exist in your field now, in the body itself, in the energetic centers within the body, around the body in the energetic field. And we're going to start to call in that really powerful, courageous dragon energy here. So if you have a dragon, if you've explored that, you can invite your dragon in now. If you've never had a dragon and you'd like to see one, you can invite one in now, see if one shows up. If it doesn't, that's completely fine. You can always come back and repeat this. Or perhaps you're just calling in that courageous dragon energy, that fiery breath of dragon energy. And as you stand in this fire, as you let this fire burn within your physical body, in your energetic space, in your emotional field, you might set the intention to focus this flame of courage on your trauma. Whatever aspect of it, of the trauma that you're dealing with is, maybe you don't even know what it is yet, and that's okay. So then you're focusing your intention on stepping out of denial and acknowledging your trauma, acknowledging your triggers. As we step into sound here, just explore this a little bit. You might just stand in your flame and enjoy this. You might meet with your dragon. You might have a conversation with your dragon. You might just enjoy letting the flame and the sound work together to release fear from the energetic field, from the physical body, and invite in courage. Courage to do whatever it is next that is meant for you to do on your voyage of healing your trauma. Inviting in that strong, beautiful dragon's energy. Burning up any frequencies of fear around our trauma, letting those go. Allowing that fear to release, to let go. Calling in courage here, claiming your courage. This is your courage. You deserve this courage. Say ashoye hashe. Say ashoye hashe. Sashayota. Releasing any last frequencies of fear here. Recognizing that under the fear is your courage, is that beautiful, glowing, fiery light of unconditional love, of protective love, of courageous love. Calling that in fully now, standing fully in the flame of that courageous love, of that courage. And knowing that you can come back here at any time and call this courage back in and claim your courage. This is your courage to be claimed at any time. Anytime you're feeling fearful, you can come back and claim your courage you can stand in this beautiful fire and claim your courage. As you're ready now, leave that fire burning, knowing that it's in this energetic space. It will do no harm. Perhaps set the intention that it burns as long as it needs to for your highest good. Step out of the flames. Look around once more at your beautiful energetic sanctuary. Come back down your mountain. Let that sanctuary go. Come back into the room you're sitting in. Remember your body here. Notice how you feel. Notice any shifts. Maybe there's nothing noticeably different, and that's completely fine. Maybe you feel empowered here. Maybe you feel more courageous or less fearful. This courageous, fiery love is your birthright. It's part of that same divine source that fuels our spirit. And it is always there for you to call in. It is always there for you to claim. As you're ready, you might begin to slowly move your body around. Take a few more deep breaths. Coming fully back. And repeat after me out loud if possible. I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body, and I claim my courage now. I am fully present in my body, and I deserve to claim my courage. I am courageous. As you're ready, just continue to slowly move your body. Perhaps take another deep breath. Ooh, say hi, hi, hi. Ooh. You are courage. You are love. You are loved. You are protected. And you are safe. As you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Have a beautiful rest of your evening and a courageous rest of your week. I will see you either next week or in about a month for our next Wind Down Wednesday live show. Have a beautiful night.